2015 and a sectarian flashpoint in Northern Ireland with a girl trapped under a car. The violence was contained thanks to the leadership of Andy George, a Belfast police officer of Asian descent, who was commended for his leadership. Yet only 3 years later, he brought a racial discrimination case against the police force he'd served during those protests.
I definitely think there's still institutional racism. I know it's not a term that most people like within policing in particular. While I was in the armed response unit, I was helping one of my friends stock the tuck shop that we had, and one of my colleagues actually come round and said, "You packies will put up a shop anywhere." That same person a couple of months later also called me the N-word in a night out.
He lost one racial discrimination case and won another, saying he'd been unfairly denied promotion. But he's by no means alone in making such complaints. Many other black, Asian and minority ethnic officers have done the same. Kevin Maxwell and Shabnam Chowdhury, both former Met police officers, said their careers were blighted by racism.
The police committed over 40 unlawful acts against me because of the colour of my skin. That is systemic.
Shabnam, systemic racism, would you use that word?
I don't know if it's systemic, but it wasn't certainly every day. I use the analogy, it's like carbon monoxide poison. You can't see it, you can't smell it, but it's definitely there because it followed me throughout my entire service, right through to when I left.
Everything you've said points to systemic racism. If racism follows you throughout your career, that's a systemic problem.
Bringing a racial discrimination case against the police sounds straightforward. In reality, it's not. Both Kevin, Shabnam and others we've spoken to say the process of expressing grievance against police forces is stacked against BAME officers.
I would encourage no black or brown officer to proceed with an employment tribunal.
Really?
You know, from lodging the claim, from the experience in the actual tribunal, which was as traumatic actually as the racism in the force.
How?
To the appeal.
Why was it traumatic?
Because you're having to go more often than not before an all-white judiciary to tell them of your lived experience as a black or brown person in Britain.
In a statement, the Metropolitan Police said, "We want everyone who works for the Met to have full confidence in how internal grievance complaints are managed. We don't believe we are a racist organisation." Whilst the Police Service of Northern Ireland told us, "We recognise that it can be difficult for any staff to raise grievances in an organisation. We're currently reviewing our procedures to ensure it has the confidence of the entire workforce." Lawrence Davis is a lawyer who represents officers in racial discrimination cases, but also advises police forces. He says the grievance process is not fit for purpose.
We're going from a situation where only 1% of people complain about discrimination at work. So how do we get to a position where majority of people who experience it feel empowered to complain about it? And that would be if you bring a grievance, you're not seen as a troublemaker, and the grievance is dealt with objectively. And the only way I can see to do that is to make the grievance process independent.
And despite their experiences, Kevin and Shabnam believe that change is possible.
There's lots of good work going on, I don't deny that, but there's a hell of a lot more that needs to be happening.
I'm a believer, you know, black and brown people do not have the power to change things. We need to take good white people with us, and they are out there.
Raghi Omar, News at 10.